Well, the Nationals are going on a listening tour. They recognise that they need to win over more voters, or indeed that they're losing voters as of the last election. Where to from here then? What's the problem they're trying to address? Joining me live is the Nationals leader, David Littleproud. Thanks very much for your time. What do you think has changed more, the party or voters?
No, I think it's some of it goes to communication. I think we took to the last election eminently sensible policies, but there was perceptions that were built up in some cohorts that clearly we didn't resonate with, and we've got to face up to that. We've got to re-engage, and there's no silver bullet to that, Tom. It's actually been practical. It's listening, it's learning, it's understanding, and rebuilding that trust with practical measures and practical policies. And we've got to be honest. While we held on to all our seats, and we're proud of that as Nationals, there are emerging threats where our polling before the election and post the election showed that women in particular, 18 to 54-year-olds, didn't vote for us the way they did in 2019. And so we've got to re-engage with them and make sure that they know that we're listening and we're understanding, we're bringing forward policies that will actually address a lot of their challenges, but their aspirations in regional Australia, because that's all the Nationals do, is we're focused on regional Australia. We've got a purity of purpose. We don't have to compromise like other parties because they've got capital city members. We simply create policies formulated for regional and rural Australia, and that's what we've got to make sure that we can articulate. But those policies don't come from the wisdom just of the collective party room of the National Party. It actually comes from grassroots. It comes from people on the ground, and that's what we're re-engaging, not just with women, but men and women right across the electorate, regional Australia, making sure that we understand those issues that we can practically address with practical policy.
You don't have capital city voters, but you've got plenty of voters in growing cities and very modern cities. Dare I say it, they sip lattes. They might even drink some Chardonnay. Do you have a bit of a rhetoric problem with some of your members that are a little bit, shall I say, old school?
No, I think the diversity of our National Party room makes it the rich one that it is. And because we actually embrace diversity, we're not afraid of the fact that some have divergent views within our party room. That's actually a healthy thing for our democracy. And I think that keeps us centred and balanced as a party, making sure that we understand all parts of our community and our society in formulating common sense policies. That's what the Nationals do, is they bring common sense to Canberra. And we get that by the diversity of our party room and creating an environment where they're able to articulate that and not be afraid to do it. I think that makes us a richer party for it. So yes, our electorates are changing. They're becoming very much urbanised, but so too is the inequity between some of these larger regional centres and capital cities in terms of the spend. And I think we're going to see that in the budget. We're going to see billions ripped away from regional Australia, and then we're going to cop it in the neck also on cost of living pressures, that this government doesn't understand that regional Australia is unique, and you just can't have a cookie cutter approach to government. And that's the only time when you get the Nationals with the keys of the chequebook with the Liberals, that we can hold the Liberals to account and make sure that regional Australia does get its fair share. And I'm saddened to say that I fear that in this budget we're probably going to lose a lot of the infrastructure spend that helped pay the bills for this country during COVID-19, because that's what regional and rural Australia
perhaps did. Yeah, discuss that once we see the budget, what it looks like. What about, you speak about the types of voters you're talking to out there. A lot of them are very much at the front line of climate change. They're seeing things change in the climate and terrain. Was it damaging that your party was seen, at least parts of it sort of dragged kicking and screaming towards more action on climate change, and they want you to not just support it because you get a bit of a quid pro quo, but to actually really, truly think that we need to do something about it?
Well, I think our party did. I mean, our party, as far back, signed up to Kyoto and Paris, and we're going to beat those international commitments. And we've signed up to a 2050 commitment that gives us a licence to trade. And we'll do that in a sensible way that protects traditional industries. I've got 4 coal-fired power stations in my own electorate that employs thousands of workers. But you can protect those jobs, and you can look to new industries like small-scale modular nuclear that the Nationals have brought the coalition on that journey. The Liberals weren't signed up to it until the Nationals said we are going down this trajectory. And I'm proud to say that Peter Dutton had the courage to come with the Nationals. And this is a way to reduce emissions, but we can also look at the technology like carbon capture storage that protects our coal-fired power stations, and particularly our gas industry that I also have significant amounts in. So we had practical measures to address reducing emissions, but had practical measures that actually kept reliability affordability, which this government is losing control of, and reduce emissions. And that's why we're saying let's embrace new technology like small-scale modular nuclear, peak over the Pacific, don't even have to spend a cent. We can let the Yanks and the Canadians do it all and adopt and adapt here in Australia. And that's the sort of common sense approach that the Nationals want to take to Canberra when it comes to climate policy.
A little bit of rain coming down there. If it gets heavy, do let me know. But the National Anti-Corruption Commission, interesting that it could look at, well, it can look at any corruption. So is it fair enough it could look at so-called pork barrelling? If corruption is involved, it doesn't matter where it is, it needs to be rooted out?
Well, look, I'm confident, whichever way you want to look at it, the pork barrelling that the Labor Party talks about is simply delivery to regional Australia. Are they saying that 30% of Australia's population doesn't deserve infrastructure spends? And the only time that we see those programs come to fruition is when the National Party has the keys to the chequebook. And what we'll see now is the budget will rip all that out. And so this pendulum swings too far the other way. And it has to be equalised. And it gets equalised when we're in government. We bring the pendulum back to the centre. I'd rather see a more sustainable and consistent funding model for regional Australia. And if the government was open to this new political construct of being fairer and kinder, they'd sit down with the Nationals and make sure we do get our fair share.
Not just the funding though,
but regional Australia gets anything is when we're there.
Yeah, so if the NAC looks into something, it's not just the spending, you know, you're free to spend money where you'd like, but it's fair enough to delve into spending. What if a minister makes a decision purely because that minister wants to retain the seat for the government? Do you think that amounts to personal gain and therefore corruption?
No, well, Tom, look, I think what you found in the programs that I was part of have been on the panels that decided those, that they all met the criteria. It's just that the department in Canberra decided that one was a higher priority than other. I don't think bureaucrats in Canberra have a real understanding of what happens in Dubbo or Longreach or Alice Springs. I think their elected representatives can articulate more clearly about what are the priorities for regional Australia than some bureaucrat in Canberra that knows 3/5 of bugger all. So long as the project meets the criteria, then the priorities should be allowed for elected officials. Otherwise, why have elected officials? Why have democracy? Let's just let the bureaucrats get on with it. And if that happens, God help us.
All right, so as long as you're saying they can re-rank them, but they still need to be eligible. I'm conscious you're in the rain. I just want to ask you one more question about the RBA. It's set to hike rates by 0.5%. Are you concerned the RBA is going too hard and could tip or help tip the country into recession?
Well, look, they're working and they have to work in concert with the government on their fiscal policy. If they get that wrong and they get it out of sync, then we're all going to pay a far more significant bill. We knew this was coming as a government. We'd stimulated the economy to get us through COVID, and I think we should be damn proud as a country where we sit economically. But we've got to come back through the gears in slowing the economy down. And that's why Jim Chalmers has to prioritise what's in this budget in making sure that he is giving cost of relief pressure to families and he is making sure that the extra money that he does spends to make sure that we insulate the economy with the infrastructure that will protect us to ensure the economy continues to have nearly full employment but continues to grow when we're able and the global economy is able to get more stabilised. And that means that the priority in spending should be to the infrastructure. That'll particularly go to supply chains, to make sure that there's efficiencies in those so that we can continue to pay the bills. Our terms of trade continues to be strong. And this is the challenge Jim Chalmers has got, and I just worry that he's out of touch, not just with families who are doing it tough, but he's out of touch with what will be the priorities and where to spend, particularly in things like infrastructure, that'll continue to get efficiencies and grow the pie into the future for our economy.
It's been pointed out to me the regional grants team is actually based in Orange, not Canberra. Does that give you more faith in the team?
Well, that's one of the true wins of the National Party is the decentralisation, whether it was the APVMA, whether it was some of these government departments, taking them out of Canberra. I took the Murray-Darling Basin Authority out of Canberra and put them up and down the river. Well, in some of these departments, they are further away, but they're not always connected to the community the way that elected officials is. And this is why it's important that elected officials all should have that autonomy so long as it's within reason and there's no personal gain for them.
We'll let you get out of the weather, perhaps warm up with a nice latte in Mildura there in Victoria. David Littleproud.
They're very good in Mildura, Tom. You should have a crack at it.
I'm sure they are. David Littleproud there on his Listening to It in regional Australia.